Hello and welcome. I hope that you're all doing well. In this video, we're going to take a look at ways that we could retrieve data from our MongoDB database. So let's go right into the code and see how that works. So primarily what we're going to look at is just the different ways that we can select data from our database. Now the simplest way that we can do this is just doing a find method, which will be able to retrieve all of the data that is currently contained inside of our target collection. So the way we do this is we do dbo.collection. I'm going to put in the name of the collection, in this case is products. I'm going to say .find, and then we put a pair of open and closing brace brackets inside of the round brackets. These brace brackets can later be used to add filters into our data, which we'll talk about shortly, but for now we're just going to leave those empty. And then I'm going to write the results to an array, since the data will be basically just an array of different objects. And then what I'm going to have is I'm going to have a function here, and we're going to have an error and a result. And if we encounter an error, we are going to throw it. And otherwise, we are going to log the result and then close the connection. So that will be the general way that we will set that up. So as you can see, the function sort of mimics the same sort of ideas as our other sort of Node.js functions that we talked about so far. And we're just going to log out the result, which is where this array of values is going to be stored. So let's run that and just see what happens. As you can see, you get all of the different values that are contained inside of our database as a list. So you can see that every single one of these has a unique identifier as an ID. They have the name that we put in as well as the price. Now I inserted my data a couple of times just while I was testing this, so I'm going to have probably more data than you do. You don't really have to worry about what data you have. As long as it matches what you've inserted into the database, that is good. Now you may notice that this has all of the fields associated, so it's kind of like a select star query in SQL. We can specify which fields we actually want by writing them into another argument here. And that argument is essentially going to be right after here. And what it's called is called a projection. A projection says which fields we want to include and which ones we don't want to include. And we could do this in a few different ways. What we could do is we could specify ones to exclude by putting their name and then the number 0 afterwards. 0 means exclude, 1 means include. So if I put ID equals 0, what the result is going to be is you're going to get the results without the ID field, as you can see here. Now I can also explicitly mention which ones I want to include. So I could say like name 1, price 1, and this would be the same as just listing name, comma, price in the field section. So the projection can be seen as a field list where 0 means exclude the field and 1 means include the field. You can include all of the fields if you would like, or you can only include ones that you're excluding. So that would be the two different options that you have available to you. So for now, I'm going to set my projection to do everything but the ID. So we'll do it just like this. It's the easiest way to do it. And what I want to show you is the different ways that we can work with this array of values. So I can access specific results by putting in square brackets and putting the index that I'd like, much like an array in JavaScript. So for instance, if I do 0, I get the first thing that is inside of the list. So this value right here, which would be matching my result. I can get specific properties of it by putting dot and then the one that I would like. So if I want to get the name, I can say dot name, and that will give me just the name's value, in this case, desktop computer. If I want just the price, I could say dot price. In that case, I will get the price, which is 350. If you want to get all of the fields of all of the values in the array, you can of course do a loop. You can loop through all the different values and just get dot price of that particular value. So that's something to keep in mind with this as well. So this is how we access specific values and specific properties of those values. Now, one final thing that we should talk about is the way that we can filter this data. So let me just delete this here and change it back to result. Just make sure that that gives us all the values. Now, suppose I want to filter where the name is equal to desktop computer. So I only want to get values where the name is desktop computer. What I could do is I could do this. I could say name, colon, and I could say desktop computer. This is inside of the find where those empty brace brackets used to be. When we do this, you can see now I just get the values with the name desktop computer. So this is a way that we can actually filter the data inside of our query. And with this, you should now have a pretty good understanding of how to work generally with MongoDB. You know how to create collections, you know how to put data into those collections, you know how to get data out of those collections. We now have a full sort of picture of the way that we interact with various different data components in MongoDB. You can see that MongoDB follows a lot of the relational ideas, but working with objects instead of tables with rows and columns. There's a lot more, of course, that you could do with Mongo, but this gives you the fundamentals to get up and running. And with this, you should be able to create applications using Mongo and better understand the different types of queries that exist for it. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.